Welcome back. Let's look at the concept map again. So now we are going to look at time, speed, and distance. So when we are looking at this triangle is going to help us to find the formulas easier when it comes to distance, speed, and time. So when we are looking at time, which is the one that is over here, then we are going to say that the formula to find time is distance divided by speed. So that is distance divided by speed. Can you see how this triangle makes things easier? Let's look at speed. So speed is this one. And the formula for speed is distance divided by time. That is distance divided by time. Right, let us look at the last one, which is distance. So distance is speed multiplied by time. Distance is speed multiplied by time. So this triangle we are going to use throughout the lesson just to find those formulas easier. Time. Let's look at an example focusing on time. Time. How long it takes for an event to occur. For example, 2.5 hours or 2 hours, 30 minutes. Let's look at an example. A train travels for 500 kilometers at a speed of 200 kilometers per hour. How long did the train travel? Now, remember, I said this triangle is going to help us with our formulas. When the question says how long, we are looking for time. Do you know what the formula is for time? Yes, you are correct. Our formula will be distance divided by speed. So what was the distance here? The distance was 500 kilometers. And what was the speed? The speed was 200 kilometers per hour. Do you have the answer? 500 divided by 200. Yes, you are correct. That is going to give us 2.5 hours. Let's move on to the next one. So when we are looking at 2.5 hours here, what is the rate for this whole question? Time is to distance. That's 2.5 hours is to 500 kilometers. When we simplify that, that gives us 1 hour is to 200 kilometers. Remember, that was the rate there, 200 kilometers every hour. That is 200 kilometers per hour. Let's look at a second example. A second train travels for 500 kilometers at a speed of 250 kilometers per hour. How long did this train travel? Now, it's a second train, the same distance, but now the speed is different. What happened to the speed? The speed has increased. So let's look at how we are going to solve that question. Do you remember the formula for time? Yes, it is distance divided by speed. That distance is still 500. We are going to divide it now by 250 kilometers per hour. Do you have the answer already? 500 divided by 250 gives us an answer of 2 hours. Let's look at what this means. We did increase the speed, right? So that means that the faster you go, then the less time taken. With the previous example, when our speed was 200 kilometers per hour, we had 2.5 hours. But now we've increased the speed, but now the time taken becomes less. What does this mean? It means that speed and time are indirectly proportional. Indirectly proportional means as the one quantity increases, the other one decreases, or vice versa. So the rate there would be our time is to distance, 2 hours is to 500 kilometers. That is 1 hour is to 250 kilometers. That means 250 kilometers every hour. So our rate here is 250 kilometers per hour. Let's move on. Let's look at speed. Now, what is speed? The distance moved over a certain amount of time. For example, 30 kilometers per hour. An example is a motorbike travels for 320 kilometers for 5 hours. How fast was the motorbike traveling? How fast is asking us for the speed. Do you remember what the formula for speed is? Let's get our triangle to help us. So speed would be, yes, distance divided by time. What is our distance? 320 kilometers. And we are dividing that by our time, which is 5 hours. Right, so do you have that on your calculator? Do you have your answer already? Yes, it is 64. How do we write the units for 64? Because it's a speed, remember, we are going to write kilometers per hour. That is our speed. Let's look at the rate for this question. So the rate here, let's look at time is to distance. That was 5 hours is to 320 kilometers. When we simplify that, that is 1 hour is to 64 kilometers. 64 kilometers traveled every hour. So our rate there is 64 kilometers per hour. Let's look at a second example. But now we have done something to the distance. A motorbike travels for 400 kilometers for 5 hours. How fast was the motorbike traveling? We are still looking at speed. So, do you remember that formula? Distance divided by time. What has changed compared to the previous example? We have now decreased the distance. We have now increased the distance. So, we now have 400 kilometers, and that is divided by the same 5 hours. Do you know what 400 divided by 5 is? Yes, we have 80 kilometers per hour. So let's compare these two examples. In the previous example, we had the speed at 64 kilometers per hour, and the distance there was 320 kilometers. Now, our speed has increased to 80 kilometers per hour, and the distance is 400 kilometers. What does this mean? This means that the faster you go, the more distance covered in a certain period of time. Remember, the time was 5 hours for the previous example, and it is still 5 hours for this example. But now, with the increase in distance, there's also an increase in speed. What does this mean? It means that speed and distance are directly proportional. Directly proportional means when the one quantity increases, the other quantity also increases. Let's take a break, and then I'll see you just now.